Is Janemba the strongest Z villain? And I think there are arguments that could be made going either way. My honest perspective on it, just watching the show and the manga and reading it, just so many times at this point, is that Janemba was one of the first Z villains I thought that came in as a serious threat without major introduction, right? We didn't have year-long build-up, years-long story kind of drip-feeding us different things about this character, showing us who he was going to become. You're in the afterlife, you're already basically in some form of hell, and then all of you know the next biggest threat comes about. He manifests more or less out of nowhere. He distorts time, he manipulates dimensions, his body, he can attack you from unconventional angles, and the only way you can actually defeat him and not be erased for eternity, more or less, is to actually fuse with your arch rival, right? That's a crazy timeline to think about, and obviously this is off of the main canon Z timeline, but I think it still matters, because look at all the things that have been written up, drawn up, or animated in non-canon format that has found its way into the show and that has essentially been canonized by a result, whether it's been a decade or decades later. Dragon Ball has done that with a lot of things that we initially said, no, that's never going to happen, or that doesn't count. And more or less, there's always a general universe, I think from what Toriyama said, RIP to the GOAT, that even some extensions of Dragon Ball that he didn't write himself, he still considers them all different alternate realities of the general universe. Take that as you will. Again, Janemba, for what he came in with, no introduction, no announcement, just, oh, this dude is bad news and he doesn't care and you need to figure it out. We hadn't had a villain like that in the series with such an impact so quickly and early on. Frieza was... we all still meme and complain about how long it took to finally get through not only the Planet Namek saga, but just the last fight, which was 5 minutes of the planet blowing up, which extended for about 5 months to 5 years of our life, right? You even look at the build-up to the Saiyans and the Saiyan saga to begin with. You look at the villains in the original Dragon Ball. All of the main villains of Dragon Ball up until Janemba had quite a bit of backdrop and storytelling to kind of get you ready for their appearance. Janemba just pops up out of nowhere, and again, the dude is bad news from the jump. I think that's so badass, and I think that's why I think he should be considered among a top 3 in regards to strongest Z villains for where the Z fighters were at that point in time in the series when you look across the timeline, canon or non-canon. If you want to extend this conversation to the time skip, we get to the Buu saga. Goku reaches Super Saiyan 3, which is an enormous power, and that creates a significant boost in where things stood with Janemba at its height, and then where it stands with the Majin Buu saga. Buu being able to become Buuhan, Kid Buu being the biggest threat our Z fighters had faced. I think the Majin Buus, obviously, as the pinnacle of the end of Dragon Ball Z at that point, that is no one's comparing, I would say, strength to them per se. But if you're looking at every individual villain before the Buus arrived, yeah, I would consider Janemba as one of the strongest, only because fusion was absolutely required to defeat him. Vegeta could not defeat him by himself. Goku was getting bodied. They only had to fuse. It's the same situation in Dragon Ball Super Broly. Neither Goku or Vegeta had any chance in any means to defeat Broly by themselves. Fusion was the only answer. I think that's a variable that is the most obvious thing in the entire equation, but I think it's overlooked because when you ask people about, okay, who's the strongest villain, people are going to say Frieza or Cell first, most likely. I feel like Janemba is not even thought about in the conversation because maybe you're thinking about traditional arcs and sagas. Let me know your thoughts, comment section below. Curious to get this one going. It's been Kaioken Striker.